The morning light filtered through the tinted windows of the first-class cabin, wrapping the leather seats in a soft, golden hue. The air was cool, scented faintly with citrus cleaner and brewed coffee, and calm voices whispered through the aisle like a prelude to a peaceful flight. Most passengers had settled in, newspapers unfolded, laptops booted, and earbuds inserted. But in seat 3A, a young boy sat quietly, legs dangling, posture composed, gaze steady. His name was Elijah Bennett, and he was only 10 years old. Elijah wore a navy blue hoodie, khaki pants, and sneakers that looked barely worn. Next to him was a leather duffel with a monogram stitched near the zippery WB. He held a book in his lap, fingers resting on the pages as if he'd paused mid-thought. He didn't shift, didn't squirm like kids his age often did. Instead, he simply looked out the window, watching as the catering truck pulled away from the plane. The other passengers glanced at him occasionally. Some with curiosity, some with detached interest, and some as one or two with quiet judgment. The flight attendant, Bridget Kessler, noticed him during her pre-departure walkthrough. She paused, back straight, eyes narrowing not with concern, but with something colder. She glanced down at her tablet, flipping through the passenger manifest. Then back at Elijah. Her brow furrowed slightly, not from confusion, but from disbelief. She didn't see the book, the manners, or the calm demeanor. She saw brown skin, a boy sitting alone in first class who didn't look, to her, like he belonged. Bridget approached, her polished shoes clicking against the carpet. "Excuse me, young man," she said with a brittle smile. "May I see your boarding pass?" Elijah looked up, startled but polite. He handed her the neatly folded paper from the seat back pocket. She unfolded it, glanced down, then looked back at him with eyes that didn't soften. "Are you sure this is your seat?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Elijah said. Bridget exhaled, lips tightening. "And who are you traveling with?" "No one. My father dropped me off at the gate. He's meeting me in Chicago." Her mouth pinched. "I see," she said, tone sharp now. "Well, we'll need to verify this with the gate agent. Come with me, please." Elijah hesitated, confused. "But this is my seat." Bridget reached for his arm. Not rough, but not gentle either. "I need you to come with me." Now, a few passengers turned to watch. One man shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. A woman across the aisle raised an eyebrow but quickly looked away. Elijah stood, his boarding pass still in her hand. As he stepped into the aisle, she moved to guide him forward, but her hand slipped and grazed the side of his head in a movement that looked, to some, like a mistake. But Elijah flinched. It wasn't a mistake. Bridget's voice rose. "This seat wasn't assigned to you. You need to move." "But I didn't do anything," Elijah whispered. He wasn't crying. He didn't scream. He just looked stunned. Humiliated. As if he'd been stripped of something far more valuable than a seat. Something no apology could return. The silence in the cabin was heavy. A businessman near the front pulled his phone out. Another passenger muttered, "That's not right," but no one intervened. Bridget marched Elijah toward the galley, her jaw clenched. What she didn't know, what no one on that plane knew, was that Elijah Bennett was the only son of the airline's CEO, Christopher Bennett. And Christopher, who had been delayed in traffic and couldn't accompany his son through TSA, had been tracking the boarding process via internal systems. He'd watched the gate agent scan Elijah's ticket. He confirmed the upgrade. He even texted his assistant, "Let me know when the plane's in the air." But when he got an alert that the manifest had been changed manually from inside the aircraft without explanation, made a call. A call that would shift the entire flight from a routine departure to a reckoning. "Hi, this is Chris Bennett. Put me through to the flight operations director." Now. Minutes later, the plane was halted at the gate. The captain emerged from the cockpit. Bridget looked up, confused. "What's going on?" "I was just told to pause boarding and remain at the gate," the captain said. "Why?" He didn't answer her. Instead, he turned to Elijah. "Son, are you all right?" Elijah nodded slowly. "Come with me. Let's go back to your seat." Bridget stepped in. "He's not assigned to first class." "I confirmed it." The captain shook his head. "You didn't confirm anything. That seat was assigned to Elijah Bennett. And your actions just caused a hold on a full flight plus a pending investigation." Bridget's eyes darted, panic blooming beneath her mascara. I was following procedure." "No, you weren't," the captain said flatly. "You were following your bias. It took less than 15 minutes for corporate security to arrive. Bridget and 2 other crew members were asked to disembark. The remaining passengers murmured as the news spread through the cabin like static electricity. Elijah returned to 3, still silent, still composed, but his eyes flicked to the side when a woman in the adjacent seat gave him a warm smile and whispered, "You okay, sweetheart?" He nodded. Meanwhile, at corporate headquarters, Christopher Bennett wasn't finished. He ordered an internal review of every passenger complaint linked to Bridget over the last 2 years. Dozens surfaced disproportionately involving passengers of color, especially in premium cabins. Microaggressions, downgraded seats, alleged policy violations. None had stuck until now. By midday, headlines were already circulating. Airline crew suspended after racial incident involving CEO's son. 10-year-old wrongfully removed from first-class outrage and corporate fallout. Bridget's image leaked to the press. The union distanced themselves quickly. Her suspension turned into a formal termination within 48 hours pending civil rights litigation. The airline publicly apologized with a press release signed by Christopher himself, promising immediate reforms, diversity retraining, and new oversight protocols. But inside Elijah's heart, no policy could erase the sting of what had happened. It wasn't about the seat. It wasn't about class or even the slap. It was about being treated like less than human without cause, without hesitation. When his father met him in Chicago, he didn't say anything at first. Just pulled him into a long, quiet hug. Later that night, as they sat in the kitchen of their townhouse with hot cocoa steaming in their mugs, Elijah finally asked, "Would she have done that if I didn't look like me?" Christopher didn't answer immediately. Then, "No. I don't think she would have." Elijah looked down at his cup, shoulders slumping. "But that's not your fault," his father said. "And it never will be." The next day, Christopher announced the launch of a new scholarship in Elijah's name for aspiring Black pilots, engineers, and aviation professionals. For every $1 the airline spent on damage control, they'd spend 5 more on building equity. Christopher made sure of that. As for Elijah, he didn't stop flying. He didn't shrink from the world or the stares that sometimes came with his skin color. If anything, he stood taller, straighter. Because while that flight attendant tried to take something from him, what she didn't know was that strength ran deep in his blood. Integrity was his inheritance. And no slap silent or spoken could erase who he was. Years later, Elijah would walk through the doors of the U.S. Air Force Academy, his head held high, a different kind of boarding pass in hand, one earned, not doubted. And this time, no one questioned his seat.